Hi guys. So someone sent me an email asking me a question that I thought I had answered during our class last week, but on reviewing the video, I noticed that I did not. And that was, how can I make something? I showed you guys how to create EC in or EC out of different keyframes. What happens when you want to have both interactions happen, or both actions happen between two keyframes? So meaning I want to EC in from one keyframe, but I want to EC out on the other one. In other words, how do I accelerate out of one keyframe, go fast, and then in the middle of the tweening, start decelerating to decelerate towards the end? So in order to do that, what I want to show you, I'm going to show you a short video on how to do something like this. So I had created a symbol. I'm going to put it on the stage. And what I want to do is I want to move this across the screen. Now, keep in mind that the guide that I gave you guys, the visual guide, especially with motion paths on how to recognize accelerating and decelerating, and that is the distance between the tween frames on the action. And what that means is the following. So let me go ahead and right click on this layer, and I'm going to add motion tween to it. In that 1 second of animation, I want to move that symbol across. Now you'll notice that I have one keyframe here and another one at the end. Everything else in that path is a tween frame. And as you notice, they're equidistant, which means your motion is linear, right? Now, the goal is to get some of these tween frames closer to one another. That means you're going slower, and the further apart they are, the faster the animation is going to happen. So let's go ahead and add to this frame. I'm going to go ahead and add as tween. I'm going to add the ease out on this one. So I'm going to go ease out. Ease out. There you go. And you notice that they get closer to one another. That would be the first thing you would do. Then you would go to the first one and they would say, okay, on this keyframe, I want to add ease in. But as you notice, this changes that are being applied to the motion tween are affecting the entire tweening. From the properties affects the entirety of the timeline on that particular object. So they're based on the actual layer, not the object itself. They are based on the layer. So as a whole, the layer is being affected. So when I go and make that ECN, my tween frames get closer to one another here, but they get separated here, which means it's going to accelerate as it goes in that direction. And that's not what I want. If I play this back, my symbol goes slow at the beginning and it goes fast towards the end. And that's not what I want it to go slow over at the end. So what can I do? Well, this is where your modification graph, the motion graph that you have under each one of the layers, comes in handy. What I want to do is I want to open that up. Let me actually undo this so that I get my motion to be linear once again. So we start from scratch. And so what I want to do is I want to double click my layer to open up the motion graph. Now, you have many types of eases under that motion graph. Let's start with something simple, in this case, slow. So if I click on slow, two things you need to keep in mind. Number one, look at the shape of the curvature under the graph. And now look at the distance in between the tween frames. You'll notice that this is going to slow down as it goes towards the right. My goal is to have it also slow down as it begins. So if I keep on going through these, you'll notice that none of them is doing what I needed to do. However, I'm keeping an eye on my graph. Now let me close those simple ones and let me go for stop and start, which seems to be the closest thing to what I want. I want something that when it starts and it stops is when I want changes. So if I go under slow on this one, you will notice that my tween frames get wider at either end and then get closer to each other in the center. Medium, fast, and that seems to be exactly what I'm looking for. They are separated here. That means they're going fast at the beginning and at the end. And since the tween frames are closer to one another in the center, it's going to slow down. Let's play this back and see what happens. You will notice that the circle accelerates as it takes off, goes fast, and slows down, and then it goes fast again. That is the reverse of what I want. I want it to go slow at the beginning and slow at the end. This is why I keep on telling you, take a look at the graph. Keep an eye on the graph. My goal is to make this change on the graph the reverse curvature. And if you notice, we're only changing on the x-axis. We're not changing the y-axis. So if I click on the y, my motion is linear on the y. There's no motion. Basically, it's not moving at all. But if I go to the x, I see that curvature. So my goal is now to create a graph that is the reverse of this. Now, how do I go about doing that? How do I create a graph that is the reverse of this? So you can either create an extra keyframe in this end by using the keyframe like I showed you during the class, and adding a keyframe and then changing the curvature by using the Bezier handles. That's one way to do it. Another easy way to do it is to actually, since I know now that I need to reverse that graph, I can go to the presets and go to custom all the way at the end. Remember, under custom, I can go ahead and add handles to my graph. And so if I create the same pattern that I saw on my graph before, I now see that I can replicate the acceleration at the beginning, slow down in the middle, acceleration at the end, which means that if I change my curvature here to the reverse, I'm going to achieve the reverse effect, which is slow at the beginning and slow at the end. Remember, the closer the curvature is to the horizontal, the slower your motion will be on that particular end. The more steep it is in the middle, the faster it's going to go. And so when I play this back now, you'll notice that my ball slows down at the beginning and it goes fast in the middle and slows down at the end. If you want that to be a little bit more pronounced, you can always go back in and keep on playing with the graph to get more of the effect you're looking for. If you truly want it to be very pronounced, you want to make that as steep as possible. Or if you want to lessen the effect, you can just go ahead and manipulate that curve until you get the effect you want. So this is how you go ahead and, again, keeping an eye between three things. Number one, what is the position of your keyframes? Second, what does the curve look like based on the based animations? They pretty much give you a starting point. And this is something I said from the beginning of the animation portion of the course, which was keep an eye on the things that you're basically given tools to begin your work. And that from that point on, you basically use this as your stepping stone. And that from then on start changing. So take a look at what the curvature of the graph does in regards to the spacing between the tween frames. And that should give you a very good idea as to what is supposed to happen when you change that curvature. And as you do, you'll notice that the spacing on the actual visual tells you exactly what's going to happen. So this would be how you would create that slow acceleration, fast in the middle, and deceleration as you get towards the end.